Good day, everybody. Once again, it is me, the J to the E to the double F free. This is Jeffrey Harrison. You're listening to the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. For today's interview, we have an exclusive interview with Calvin Tankman. He is a new talent who has just signed with Major League Wrestling. He is a 5-year veteran of the industry. He is a big super heavyweight, but the dude is super athletic. Very excited to be talking with him today about signing his first major contract with MLW and what he has to say about that. So stay tuned for our interview with Calvin Tankman here on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. All right, everybody, you are back on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast, and now we have a new member to the MLW roster. He is all about the super heavyweight hustle. He is the one and only Bizarro Luchaversal champion, a former IWA Mid-South heavyweight champion, Calvin Tankman. Calvin, thank you for joining the show today, man. Really appreciate it. So, you are now part of the MLW roster. So tell me about that. Tell me about signing with MLW.
MLW really put that vote of confidence in me and really made me feel like they definitely believed in me. So I'm definitely very excited to work with them and to see where this goes. With everything being up in the air with the pandemic and stuff, I'm definitely chomping at the bit to get to work. But yeah, they do a lot of great things with their young talent. So I was pretty confident in the decision. If you watch their show, they have a lot of young talent that they're pushing to like that next level and helping them become the next big stars. So I'm excited to be a part of that, see where we end up as a whole.
Now, is this your first big contract?
Yes.
So I guess, what is it like, that feeling, you've been at this wrestling, you've been in wrestling for 5 years now. So what is it like, when you're in that hustle and after several years, you're finally able to land that first big contract? What does that feel like?
It's exciting. Definitely very exciting. I don't know. I'm one of those people where, like, I try not to celebrate too much and kind of just start working towards the next big thing. So it's one of those things where I was really excited. I signed in May and kind of had to, like, keep it hush-hush until they decided to make a press announcement. So that was probably the hardest thing. It's like, especially with your first contract, like, that's what everybody wants to do, is be able to say that they wrestle on TV, like, since you were a kid, you know what I mean? So, like, not being able to share that and being definitely super excited was definitely probably one of the hardest things. Definitely, once I got the confirmation and everything was actually signed and done, safe to say I definitely did a happy dance around my living room, so.
Okay, so I guess it's more like, when something like this happens, now the real work begins, right? Now
Exactly.
You really have to lace it up, roll up your sleeves, and now you're really getting to work, and instead of, like, celebrating the moment, right?
Exactly. I think that's what, like, it's kind of like the football and sports mentality I had. You kind of celebrate for a little bit, but, it's like the playoffs. You win a game, you're excited, you advance to the next round, you give yourself about 2 hours or the rest of that night to celebrate, and then by the next day, it's on to the next team. We're scouting film and seeing what we can do better next time and everything else. It's kind of the same thing. I'm excited to get the opportunity to showcase what I could do on a national and worldwide stage, but I know there's going to be work to do, and there's going to be an adjustment process, and I'm excited to do that. I'm coming in with my ears open, or my eyes open, and my ears too. So it's one of those things where, like, I already know that this is definitely the next level. So there's going to be a lot of learning. Everything might not be perfect the first time. So I just got to go into here with just ready to learn and ready to do whatever I can to help me and the company succeed. So I'm definitely excited.
Okay, so you mentioned earlier MLW has a very fresh, exciting young roster. Tell me what else you like about MLW. Of course, now we have this deal at MLW with DAZN to have we'll be streaming MLW content and possibly even doing live events in the future. So, tell me about why it's such an exciting product right now.
They're one of the few companies, if any, that has been still making business deals and still doing big things during the pandemic. Everybody else is kind of like just trying to do what they can to stay afloat. I feel like, and they're still like announcing things like that, starting new shows. Because they have, can't remember the name of the show off the top of my head. I watched it on YouTube earlier, but it was showing the older from like 2002, the older MLW tapes and everything like that. So it's definitely cool to see that and exciting to be a part of that because, like I said, like it's especially during a pandemic for them to still be putting new shows out and still be on the tip of the tongue of everyone without having with it being difficult to have live events right now. So yeah.
But how exciting is it for you that once the shows do get going, once the content does get back on track, that you could be doing live events on DAZN, which has major boxing fights and major combat sports and everything.
It's definitely huge for us because it'll open eyes to people who may not have heard MLW or may not have seen it on other platforms. So anytime you can get something like that that has a large following that you can put your content on, it's going to be good for business. So I have full confidence with the roster that they have and the different breed of style that they have. We'll definitely be able to catch some eyes from that. So it's just an exciting time. Hopefully we can help the company and the business grow as they make decisions like this. And so, it's just really exciting to get to expose yourself to a lot of new people.
Calvin, who do you think, other than yourself, who are the top in-ring talents in MLW right now?
That's real difficult. Yeah, you can't say MLW without saying Fatu and Hammerstone. Honestly.
Okay.
And I gotta say those are two at the top of my list because one of those things that I said for a minute that I want to do is I want to prove that I'm one of the best big men in the country, if not the world. So I can't do that unless I go through the best. So you got the world champion, the national champion, two of the biggest, burliest, most badass dudes in the locker room, and definitely want to test myself against those two. But they have a plethora of guys from many different ring styles. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even you have your Myron Reeds and Jordan Olivers that are crazy athletic. I already said Fatu and Hammerstone. Then you got your Tom Lawlers, your Dominic Garinis, your Eric Stevens. Those guys that are just brutal and technically sound. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many different styles there that it's kind of hard for me to narrow it down just to one or just to a few that are the best. But those are the top that come off the top of my head.
Would you say Jacob Fatu and maybe anyone in CONTRA Unit will be your first targets once you get going here?
I don't know. I don't know about that one. I like to keep people guessing. One of my favorite rappers as a kid used to say, "Gangsters move in silence and don't talk a lot." So that's where we at with this one. Kind of gotta if you're the head coach, you let out your game plan, then they can be ready for it. So you kind of gotta just wait and see.
Yeah, your in-ring style is a hybrid style. You like the MMA and incorporating that.
Yeah.
How do you like to incorporate the MMA sort of fighting style into your style in the ring? And who are your favorite MMA fighters to watch?
Ooh, obviously, just because I was in high school, if we're going with my favorite to watch, when I was in high school, it was like during the prime of like Anderson Silva.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? So that was always one of my favorites to watch. Every time he had a fight at the time, we didn't have the money for the pay-per-view, so we were always at B-dubs to watch. Man, there's so many that, like, if we're going to, like, smaller divisions, since the WEC days, I've always been a big Uriah Faber fan. Couldn't tell you why. He's just always really good. And, like, he was one of the featured guys on WEC, which I used to watch a lot. I remember I watched him fight Mike Brown, I believe, and I think it was a rematch. He had lost the first one in like an upset, and he like broke his hand in like I think it was like the first round, and he continued to even throw some punches with a broken hand and just throw elbows and still almost won the fight. So like, especially watching as a kid, I was like, all right, this dude's the man. You know what I mean? Because you know what I mean? I've broken my hand before. There's no way you can give me a throw punch if my hand's already broken.
I remember that.
You know what I mean?
I remember that fight. That was a hell of a fight.
Yeah. So we got those guys. If we're doing like, I don't know, man. I'm just a huge fan of the sport. I used to be a big John Jones fan when he was coming up. We'll go with obviously GSP. Those are just the top guys that I like that everybody watched when I was younger. But how I incorporate that into my style, especially within the last year and a half, I've started to use more of my striking, more strikes, more power behind those. Times catching people when they're missing, you know what I mean? Things of that nature. I'm in no means necessarily on Tom Lawler's level with the MMA skills, but I do have some training, and I have a wrestling background. So really, it just depends on the situation. But there's a lot of times that I definitely, you see me, I'm pretty strike heavy.
I would love to see you get in there and mix it up with Tom Lawler at some point. I think that would be a fun matchup.
Well, honestly, cheap plug for another show this Friday. At Heavy Hitters for Paradigm Pro. It's me and Tom Lawler and UWFI Rules.
Oh, that's awesome. All right, so what made you gravitate toward the pro wrestling track for your career?
I was a wrestling fan first. Wrestling was the first thing I saw, and I was like, I want to do that. My older cousin, Travis, shout out to him, he showed me that when I was really young. And so that was like literally the first thing I did. Like when I was a kid, I had a little like 3 foot, maybe 3 foot, like a stuffed elbow that they brought, that a family friend had got me. And when I was younger, I used to cuddle it. But then when I started watching wrestling, he was like almost my size. So he became the person that I suplexed and did moonsaults off my dresser on and everything else. So really, like, wrestling was definitely my first love. And you can probably ask my parents about that because they bought me many a box spring back in the day.
Oh, that's awesome, man. But you know, watching you in the ring is just so impressive. Because I mean, you are quite the dude. You are a genuine super heavyweight. But when you get in there, man, you move like a cruiserweight. So can you tell us about that? About kind of adopting this very kind of fast athletic style that you don't see many guys your size using that type of style.
I don't know. It's always been something I loved. I guess I always tell people the two people that I first watched on a wrestling show that I vividly remember were Rey Mysterio and Goldberg. For two totally separate reasons. But, like, that's what started my wrestling fandom. So, like, I always loved the big, powerful guys. But then at the same time, the cruiserweights and the small guys did things that nobody else had done. And, like, as a kid, you know, you're always watching that stuff, and you're like, well, at least me. I was the type of person where I was like, how'd they do that? I want to try that. Or I want to do that. Or I bet I could do that. So, like, growing up, I was never, always bigger than everybody, but I never saw myself as bigger than anyone else. That makes sense? So, like, if somebody else was doing it, whether it be, like, athletically or just, like, messing around in the backyard jumping off of something, I was doing it, too, just because I wanted to prove that I could do it. So I guess like as I got older, especially with football, they kind of took that mentality like out of you. Yes, you're a big guy. Yes, you're going to do a little bit of different things, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to do the same agility drills. That doesn't mean that you're not going to do some of the conditioning drills and all that other stuff. So just because your size doesn't mean that you're not an athlete. And so that's kind of always how I've played. And I've always been pretty athletic for my size and moved well. So coming to wrestling, it was one of those things where that was the style I liked, and I could make it work. You know, everybody expects like a big guy that you wrestle. Like when you hit the ropes, he's going to be there. You know what I mean? He's going to be there to swing a clothesline, or he's going to hit you with a shoulder tackle or something like that. But especially me with a football background, what happens if you turn your back to hit the ropes, and I hit the ropes another way, and you don't see me coming? And then you got 330 pounds, that's 330 to 350 pounds smashing at you, coming in, 10 miles an hour. With a big pouncing out of the ring. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things where my size and speed allowed me to be more deceptive and allowed me to hit people in ways that they never expected to be hit. So it was just one of those things where I saw an advantage and I saw I had the ability to do it. So it was kind of like, why not?
Now, I mean, this is just sort of a very weird time, where we have a pandemic going on, and some wrestling is getting back in to action right now. So I guess, what do you think about that? I mean, do you think it's important, because wrestling is very risky. We are in the middle of a pandemic, but people are also looking for distractions and entertainment more than ever right now. When things are shut down, they can't work, or they're stuck at home. But as one, as a wrestler, and as someone, who might be having that opportunity to work soon, like, what do you think? What's your perspective on this as a wrestler?
As long as you're being as cautious as you can. Like the shows that the two shows that I've done were a show called GCW, and then I did another show called Parkade. They had seats spread out. They had mask and sanitizer at the table. Masks were required. They had, like I said, they had separated seating, and they were so far away that like we weren't, we weren't high fiving anyone. The most someone got was like we might touch elbows. So I felt more safe doing, or I felt safe doing that. And me, like with the normal job that I do, I have to be out and travel anyway, and go from store to store. You know what I mean? So it's kind of one of those things where I'm going to have to expose myself anyway. So I kind of have to just be as cautious as I can. And like all the shows I've had, they have thermometers at the door. Like before you're allowed to walk in the locker room, they have a thermometer on your forehead checking your temperature. You know what I mean? Making sure that you don't have a fever, making sure that you're okay. So like that's what really made me very comfortable with it. If those things hadn't been there and it was just like, all right, just come risk it, I definitely wouldn't be doing it. But they've done everything they can to try and make it as safe as humanly possible.
Now, another interesting thing MLW announced earlier this month, they're talking about doing shows in Hawaii and Puerto Rico. So what do you think about potentially having MLW doing some island shows coming up in the future, and would you like to be a part of those?
I definitely would like to be a part of those. Those are two places I've never been. And anywhere I get to go, that I get to do what I love with professional wrestling, I'm excited to do that. So, especially places like that. And definitely Puerto Rico. Because Puerto Rico, there's a lot of rich wrestling history there. There may be some about Hawaii, but I don't know. I'm not a Hawaii connoisseur. I'm not necessarily a Puerto Rico connoisseur either. But Puerto Rico is such a big part of like the wrestling industry, and there's been so much history that's went on down there that you know what I mean. If you're a wrestling fan, you've at least heard the names and seen some of the stuff that's going down there. It definitely like just the prospect of being able to do something like that definitely excites me.
And who were your top wrestling trainers and mentors?
My top trainers?
Yeah.
A man named TJ Kemp from the Indianapolis area. He was OVW trained in the early 2000s, and he took an interest in me when he didn't have to, and he came in and really took me from knowing just the basics of bumping and everything else to really like breaking down the psychology and everything else with wrestling, and almost like a Zen master. I'd come up to him after every match. Is that good enough? Did I do this okay? Was this here? And he'd be like, no, not quite yet. Maybe do this, this, and this. And so, like, especially for the first, like, 6 months, I was like, some of the stuff maybe I didn't understand, or it was difficult for me to, like, well, why would I do it this way? And then, like, eventually it kind of, like, clicked. And he just kept either working matches with me or paying attention to everything I did. So it was him, Apollo Star as another Indianapolis and Midwest guy. I did a lot of work in, like, Ohio, Wisconsin, Illinois area, Indiana area. So both those guys have been around for at least near 20 years. So it was a lot of stuff that's thrown at me, but I was definitely in good hands. And then another man named Hillbilly Jed, who's also Central Indiana, the guy that's been around for a while. So those were really the guys that I looked up to, and even after, like, once they kind of let me off, if I see them at a show or something else, they were always giving me critiques or helping me out. Or maybe if I posted a clip and they saw something, they'd send me a DM and be like, hey, maybe fix this, try that. So definitely always thankful for those guys.
Now, what is your message to the MLW roster? What do you have to say to them, and what do they have to look forward to once you make your in-ring debut?
They have to look forward to lots of chops, because I'm going to be bringing them heaters. Lots of hard hitting, something that they've never stepped in the ring with before, or very few have. In my opinion, and I don't want to sound too cocky, but there's maybe a handful of guys, 5 maybe, that are at my size that can do some of the things that I can do in the ring. So it's going to be something that I don't know if they're ready for. But when I come, they definitely gonna know about me. They're definitely gonna feel me. And I'm not coming for just to be there, to be happy about that. It's time to work, and I'm gonna bust my butt to be at the top of the game, and hopefully, it's just like everybody does when they sign a contract. If you don't want to be the face of the company, you don't want to be world champion, then why are you signing it? So on the quest for that.
All right. I am very much looking forward to that, Calvin. So just last thing, if you have any social plugs, any merchandise plugs, anything else you want to share with our listeners that you have going on, I want to give you the time to do that. So please go ahead.
Twitter and Instagram, both at Calvin Tankman. Facebook.com/Calvin Tankman1. And then we got ProWrestlingTees.com/Calvin Tankman. Those are the places to check me out. Find out what shows I'm going to be doing next. I've got 3 or 4 shows within the next 2 months. I've got actually 3 this weekend. I've got PPW Heavy Hitters Friday, UWF High Rules versus Tom Lawler.
Oh, man.
And then we have GCW Homecoming weekend this weekend. So I'm leaving straight from there in the Louisville, Kentucky area and driving straight out to Jersey. We'll be there. Night 1, I don't think my match has been announced for night 1, but night 2, it's me and Chris Dickinson one-on-one for the first time. And then August 16th, for a company called Violence and Suffering in New Jersey, it's going to be me versus Homicide for the first time. That's one I'm definitely excited for, because last time we were in the ring together, we won some tag team titles. And so
oh, man,
now it's kind of time for me to prove myself.
Those are some epic matchups you got, man, and glad to hear you're keeping busy, and glad to hear you're wrestling and performing for fans now. That sounds that's awesome, great for you, and I really appreciate the time, man.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right, you are listening to Calvin Tankman on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. He is coming to an MLW show near you very soon, hopefully, and hopefully we'll get you guys back on TV soon, but he's also doing plenty of shows all around the country, so be on the lookout for this guy. Thank you very much, Calvin, for your time. You've been listening to Jeffrey Harris on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. All right, thank you very much to Calvin Tankman of MLW for joining us for this interview on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Remember, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or Google Play, or the 411 Mania YouTube channel. If you're listening to us on YouTube, if you can give us a like, a comment, a subscribe, I would very much appreciate it. Or if you can give us a 5-star rating or review on Apple Podcasts, I would very much appreciate that as well. Or a review on Google Play. But more than anything, thank you for listening to us. I hope everyone's doing well and staying safe at the moment. Thank you very much. This is once again the J to the E to the double F-free. I'm Jeffrey Harris, and you've been listening to the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Bye, everybody.